Hello there, lovely swarmers. It's so great to see you again. Hey, wait. I see you. You're new here. Hi. Oh my gosh, hi, welcome. Oh, please make yourself comfortable. We're so happy to have you. Oh, here is the all-important subscribe button. Feel free to give that a little click. And don't hesitate to hit the thumbs up too if you like what we do. Otherwise, sit back, relax, and welcome to the Hive. Okay, so since the close of the long-awaited conference of the parties meeting in Glasgow, we've been hearing some pretty scathing reviews. But is that really fair? Yes, there were some outcomes that could have been better, but there were some great outcomes too. We are going to give you a quick catch up on the best and the worst. All right, let's just start with the outright bad. This award goes to a little concept called access. And it was arguably the biggest failure of COP23. The venue was simply not large enough to safely hold the sheer number of registered attendees. After hours of lining up outside, some people never made it through the doors. The observer ticket holders were not permitted access to important plenaries, despite this being the whole point of the observer tickets, and they couldn't view virtually due to technical issues. Poor access extended to some low and middle income countries not even being able to send delegates once they discovered they'd need to add a 10-day quarantine period onto the beginning of their trip, which is safe and smart, but definitely limited access. And disabled people were not given appropriate access, with the Israeli Energy Minister Karine Elharrar, who is a wheelchair user, unable to get into the venue, and no sessions offering sign language interpreters. Oi, these mistakes and very poor decisions are almost unforgivable, and are absolutely a slap in the face for the inclusive and diverse social and racial justice movements, integral to the climate justice movement. Whew. Moving on to the content now. The expectation was that all countries would commit to net zero emissions by 2050. All developed countries did, and a few developing nations did too. India committed to net zero by 2070 and Nigeria by 2060. But very, very few have any form of actual plan to make the net zero by 2050 promise a reality. While China didn't make a commitment per se, they signed an unprecedented close cooperative agreement with the United States. This declaration states that China will start to decrease its coal consumption during the period of 2026 to 2030, which goes partway to make sense of China being integral in forcing a watered-down stance to getting off coal-fired power. The Glasgow Climate Pact was to call for a phase out of coal, but China and India countered with phase down, or they wouldn't sign it. But the biggest issue around the emissions reduction targets is that current 2030 promises account for only 5% of the required 45% reductions if net zero by 2050 and 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming is achievable. The catch cry of the event was "Keep 1.5 alive," referring, of course, to the need to focus on limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. In the words of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, 1.5 is on life support. The attending countries were supposed to come to COP26 with updated and stronger nationally determined contributions, NDCs, than those from the Paris Agreement. Before COP26, if all NDCs were realized, we'd be set for warming of 2.9 degrees Celsius. After COP26, where 151 countries submitted adjustments, if all the new NDCs are met, we can expect warming of 2.4 degrees Celsius. Still, a veritable catastrophe. Importantly though, the Glasgow Climate Pact, the non-legally binding signed agreement from COP26, stipulates 1.5 degrees Celsius as the goal. In fact, throughout the document, the language of the Glasgow Climate Pact is strong and science-based, references the most recent IPCC report, and acknowledges that we are in a critical decade. To that end, the Glasgow Climate Pact has asked that countries return to COP27 with revised and stronger plans, where previously NDCs were resubmitted every 5 years. This next item can be filed under could have been better. Article 6 of the Paris Agreement relates to the carbon market, and the finer points of this article have been under deliberation since 2015. But the voluntary carbon market now has a rule book of sorts. The most impactful rule is that which prohibits double counting. Up until now, the country who is making the emissions reduction through this trading scheme and the country buying the reduction certificate could claim the carbon emissions avoidance. But there are still other loopholes, so there's still room for cheating. The use or misuse of Article 6 basically makes or breaks the success of the Paris Agreement. All right, swarmers, woo! Let's take a big breath. Here's what you've been waiting for. The good stuff. Deforestation is a huge contributor to carbon emissions, about 12% annually. So it's a relief then that over 100 countries signed a pledge with an associated $20 billion fund to stop and reverse deforestation by 2030. Brazil and Indonesia joined this pledge, which gives us so much hope. The powerful greenhouse gas methane has now been singled out in emissions reductions targets. In a US-led alliance, more than 90 countries have signed a global methane pledge to reduce methane emissions by 30% from 2020 levels in the next decade. Notable absences are China, Russia, India, and Australia. Calling you in! More than 40 nations said they would align standards and coordinate investments in clean tech to fast-track the tipping point at which green technologies are more affordable and accessible than fossil-fueled alternatives. The breakthrough agenda includes China, the UK, US, India, Australia, and the EU. This type of international collaboration is destined to be powerful, with genuine emissions reduction outcomes. Over 450 global financial institutions from 45 nations who collectively control $130 trillion in assets have signed the Glasgow Financial Alliance, stating that they will fund clean technology to lower emissions and stop investing in brown holdings of coal, oil, and gas. This is a huge win! Over 100,000 human beings who are fed up with the hashtag blah 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 of the world leaders and decision makers took to the streets of Glasgow in a climate march. They represented all groups of humanity, making it even more obvious that there were large, important groups who weren't represented inside those halls. We want to be clear on this. We are not excusing the lack of ambitious action or condoning the sneaky political games some leaders are playing. But perfect is the enemy of good. We know that this did not go as hoped, and we acknowledge that there is so much work yet to do. But we can do that from a position of understanding the complexities and appreciating that headway, albeit slow, is still headway. It's important for our ability to maintain momentum and act on climate that we try to keep a measured, glass half full sort of mindset. The people's movement is strong. Join it. Democracies vote for leaders. Vote well. We want you to feel optimistically outraged, cautiously hopeful, but most importantly, ever more determined to do all that you can to influence the change around you. We have COP27 in just under 12 months. So, hey, start writing letters and having meetings with your political representatives. Keep the pressure on. Thank you so much for joining us, Swarmers. This was a big one. We really appreciate you being here and absolutely love hearing from you. So, hey, don't be a stranger. Drop a comment below. Let us know how you feel and if you have ideas on how you're going to help work towards COP27 being successful. Most importantly, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay sustainable. We will see you next time. We are going to give you a quick